Jack stood at the edge of the small human outpost, looking out over the alien landscape. The air was thin, and the sky was a strange shade of purple, unlike anything he had seen back on Earth. He had been here for years, guarding a secret. A soldier, his mission was simple: protect and serve. But this was not just any assignment. This was about Zara, the alien queen who had trusted him more than anyone else ever had. Zara was not like other aliens. She had once been a ruler of a powerful civilization, but that all changed when her people were destroyed by a ruthless enemy faction. She was one of the last survivors, lost in a vast galaxy full of dangers. Her daughter Lyra had been taken from her during the invasion, and Zara had spent years searching for her, but to no avail. Zara, despite her strength and wisdom, was haunted by the memory of the child she lost. Jack didn't fully understand the weight of Zara's pain, but he had come to care for her in a way he never thought possible. She wasn't just an alien. Queen to him, she was a friend, a mentor, and a mother figure. Over time, Jack learned more about her culture, her people, and the loss that shaped her life. Zara had taught him about the stars, about the ways of her people, and even the skills of combat that were beyond human abilities. One quiet morning, as Jack was completing his routine patrol, a message flashed across his communicator. It was a distress signal. At first, Jack thought it was just another false alarm, a malfunction in the outpost's system, or a routine check. But when the message came through with the coordinates and the name attached to it, his heart skipped a beat. It was Lyra's name. Jack read the message again. Lyra had been found. The daughter of Zara, the one who had been lost all those years ago, had somehow survived. The enemy faction that had taken her had left clues, and the galaxy's network had picked them up. Lyra was alive. He didn't need to think twice. Jack knew this mission wasn't just about following orders. This was about helping Zara find her daughter and bringing them back together. He immediately started preparing for the journey. There was no time to waste. The distress signal had come from a planet on the far side of the galaxy, a dangerous and uncharted world. Jack's heart raced as he thought of the possibilities. He had no idea what he would face there, but he knew he couldn't fail. As Jack made his way to the ship's hangar, he checked his weapons. His training had prepared him for many things, but this was different. This wasn't just a battle against aliens or a fight for survival. This was a mission to reunite a family torn apart by war. It was personal. Jack entered the hangar and approached his ship. It was a sleek, combat-ready vessel designed for speed and stealth. He could hear the low hum of the engines as he entered the cockpit. The ship was ready for launch. "Jack, are you sure about this?" The voice of the ship's AI asked. "This mission could be dangerous. We don't know what we'll find on that planet." "I know," Jack replied, his voice steady. "But I have to do this. Zara deserves to be with her daughter again. I can't leave her waiting any longer." The AI didn't respond, but Jack could tell that it understood. With a deep breath, he punched in the coordinates and set the ship to launch. The engines roared to life, and the ship shot into the sky, leaving the outpost behind. The journey was long, and Jack didn't waste a second. He focused on the mission, ignoring the doubts that tried to creep into his mind. Every moment of the flight was filled with the possibility of danger, but Jack pushed those thoughts aside. He thought about Zara and her strength, and he knew that he had to be strong for her. Just as she had been for him, days passed before Jack finally reached the planet's orbit. It was a desolate world, covered in barren landscapes and jagged mountains. A storm raged on the surface, making it nearly impossible to see through the thick clouds. Jack's ship was built to handle these kinds of conditions. Even he had to admit the challenge. As he descended toward the planet's surface, Jack's mind raced with questions. What had happened to Lyra all these years? How had she survived? And why had the enemy faction kept her alive for so long? There were so many unknowns, but Jack couldn't afford to let fear stop him now. His ship touched down with a soft thud, and Jack quickly suited up. He grabbed his weapons, checked his communicator, and stepped out into the cold, alien air. Wind whipped around him, and the storm was louder than he had expected. He could barely see a few feet ahead of him, but he trusted his instincts. The distress signal had led him to this spot, and he knew that Lyra was somewhere out there. As Jack pushed through the storm, thought about the bond he had formed with Zara. He remembered her teachings, her strength, and the deep love she had for her daughter. This was more than just a mission for Jack. It was a chance to do something that would make all the pain, the loss, and the years of waiting worth it. Minutes felt like hours as Jack trudged through the storm, his every step a challenge against the wind and the biting cold. Finally, he spotted a figure in the distance, a faint outline against the swirling storm clouds. He approached cautiously, his heart pounding. It wasn't until he was close enough that he realized who it was. It was Lyra. She was standing there as though waiting for him. Her eyes, though hardened by years of captivity, met his with a mix of disbelief and hope. She had been waiting too, though she didn't know who would come. Jack's mission had finally brought them together. "Mom, I'm back," Lyra said, her voice barely audible over the storm. She took a step forward, and Jack felt a wave of emotion rush through him. He smiled, holding out his hand. "You're safe now, Lyra. The storm was fierce, but Jack didn't hesitate. With Lyra by his side, he made sure they moved quickly towards the ship. Her eyes were filled with uncertainty, but there was a spark of hope in them too. She had been waiting for so long, not knowing if someone would ever come for her. Jack understood that feeling all too well. For years, he had lived alone on the outpost, away from Earth, with only Zara's memory to keep him company. Now he had a new purpose: to get Lyra back to Zara, where she belonged. "Are you okay?" Jack asked, as they made their way back to the ship. The wind howled around them, but Jack's focus never wavered. He had been trained to endure, to push through the toughest of situations, but this mission was different. This wasn't just a battle against enemies. It was about healing a broken family. Lyra nodded, though her face showed signs of the pain she had endured. "I've been alone for so long," she whispered, her voice almost drowned out by the wind. "I didn't know if anyone was looking for me. ... if anyone cared." Jack gave her a reassuring smile. "Your mother has been searching for you for years. She never gave up. I promised her I would bring you back, and I will keep that promise." They reached the ship, and Jack helped Lyra inside, guiding her to the seat next to him. He knew the journey back would be just as dangerous as their arrival. The enemy forces that had taken Lyra would not give up easily. Jack had to be prepared for anything. The ship's engines roared to life as Jack prepared for takeoff. The storm outside raged on, but the ship's advanced systems allowed them to break through the clouds and rise above the chaos. As they climbed higher into the sky, the ship's lights flickered to life. The view of the planet below began to fade into the distance. Lyra sat silently, looking out the window at the storm below. She had been trapped on that planet for so long, with no hope of escape. And now, after so many years, she was finally free. She turned to Jack, her eyes filled with questions. "How did you find me?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. Jack looked at her, his expression serious. "Your mother never stopped looking. The galaxy is a big place, but your mother has connections everywhere. When we picked up the distress signal, I knew I had to come. You're not just some lost girl. You're a queen's daughter, and that's something people don't forget." Lyra's eyes softened as she thought about her mother. She had been so young when she was taken, and now, all these years later, she couldn't believe she was finally going to see her again. But there was a part of her that still felt lost, unsure of what her life would be like once they reached Zara. She had been through so much. Would her mother still recognize her? Would she be the same person she was before? "I don't even know what to expect when I see her," Lyra admitted, her voice tinged with doubt. "What if she's not the same?" Jack reached over, placing a hand on her shoulder. "She will be the same. You're her daughter, Lyra. She's been waiting for you. No matter what, she'll be there for you. You're not alone anymore." Lyra didn't answer right away, but she nodded slowly, taking comfort in Jack's words. The journey ahead would be long, but the promise of reunion was enough to keep her going. The days passed in a blur of stars and planets. As Jack navigated the ship through the vastness of space, the journey back to Zara's homeworld was filled with silence, broken only by the occasional conversation between Jack and Lyra. She slowly began to open up about her time with the enemy faction. Though her words were guarded and painful, they kept me locked away, she said one evening as they sat in the ship's small lounge. I was always afraid they would come for me, but I couldn't show fear. I couldn't let them see me break. Jack listened quietly, his heart aching for her. He had seen the scars in her eyes, the pain she carried. She was strong, stronger than she gave herself credit for. He knew that Zara would be proud of her daughter, proud of how she had survived. They wanted me to be something I'm not, Lyra continued. They tried to turn me into a weapon, a tool, but I refused. I couldn't become like them. Jack looked at her, admiration in his eyes. You've got more strength than anyone I know. I've seen warriors break under less pressure. You've kept fighting, even when you had no reason to.
Something special.
Lyra looked at him, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. Thank you, Jack. I don't think I could have made it without you. They both fell silent after that, each lost in their thoughts as the stars streaked past. The ship's sensors suddenly beeped, pulling them both out of their reverie. Jack, they've got company, the ship's AI voice said. Incoming ships. Looks like trouble. Jack's hand instinctively went to his weapon, his body tensing. He had known this moment would come. The enemy wouldn't just let them go without a fight. He had to protect Lyra, no matter what. Stay strapped in, Jack ordered. We're not out of this yet. He piloted the ship into evasive maneuvers as enemy vessels appeared on the radar. Jack's mind raced. He couldn't let them catch up to them, not when they were so close to Zara. The ship shook as enemy fire began to hit the shields. Jack gritted, his teeth pushing the ship faster, trying to break free from their pursuit. He had one mission, and that was to get Lyra to her mother. Wasn't going to let anything stand in his way. As the enemy ships closed in, Jack made a split-second decision. He activated the ship's cloaking system, vanishing from their sensors. It was a risky move, but it was their best chance. The ship went silent as the cloaking system took effect. Jack's grip on the controls tightened and he waited. The enemy. Ships would soon pass them by, unable to detect their presence. But for now, all Jack could do was wait and pray that they could get through this. The days seemed to drag on as Jack and Lyra continued their journey through the vast reaches of space. The cloak on their ship kept them hidden from the enemy ships, but Jack knew it was only a matter of time before their pursuers figured out what had happened. Silence in the ship was heavy, but neither of them spoke much. They both understood the stakes. This wasn't just a mission to escape the enemy. It was a mission to bring Lyra home. Lyra spent her time in the ships, a small observation deck, staring out into the endless sea of stars. Her thoughts were a mix of excitement and fear. She couldn't help but wonder how Zara, her mother, would react to seeing her again after so many years apart. Would she remember her? Would she still love her? So many questions raced through her mind, but no answers seemed clear. Jack, on the other hand, kept his focus entirely on getting them to safety. He had been in tight spots before, but this felt different. He wasn't just a soldier on a mission anymore. He had become part of this family, and he was going to make sure Lyra and Zara were reunited. No matter what. The quiet was broken when the ship's AI alerted Jack to an incoming message. It was from Zara's homeworld. Jack, we've made it, the AI said, its calm voice filling the cockpit. Jack's heart skipped a beat. He quickly activated the comms and responded. This is Jack. We're coming in. Understood, came the voice. From Zara's planet, prepare for landing. Welcome home. Jack looked over at Lyra. She had been listening intently, and he could see the mix of emotions on her face. A part of her was still unsure, still afraid of what awaited her, but another part was hopeful. This was it. She was finally going to see her mother again. The ship descended slowly through the atmosphere, the world below coming into clearer view. It was a beautiful planet full of lush landscapes, towering mountains, and oceans that shimmered like silver. The air was crisp and fresh. A far cry from the harsh world Lyra had been trapped on for so long, Jack brought the ship down gently, setting it down in a clearing near a large structure that resembled a palace. As the ship's engines powered down, the door opened, and Jack stepped out first, looking around to make sure everything was clear. Lyra followed him, her steps slow but determined. She glanced up at the towering palace, a place she had only seen in her dreams. This was where her mother had once ruled, where she belonged. She could almost feel the pull of home. "Are you ready?" Jack asked, his voice soft but full of confidence. Lyra looked at him, and for the first time in a long while she smiled.
I think so.
Together, they walked towards the entrance of the palace. As they approached, the door slid open automatically, revealing a grand hall inside. The walls were lined with statues and artwork from Zara's people. The air was thick with history. And then, they saw her. Zara stood at the far end of the hall, her regal presence filling the room. Her alien features were just as Jack remembered, tall, elegant, with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the universe. But there was something different in her expression as she saw Lyra standing there. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she didn't move. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest. She was frozen, unsure of what to do, how to act. Her mother, the powerful queen who had once ruled over millions, was now standing before her. But would she still see her as the daughter she had lost? Or would she see only the years of pain and distance that had separated them? "Mom?" Lyra's voice was small, but it carried through the hall. Zara's eyes filled with tears as she stepped forward, her hand reaching out. Lyra, ... In that moment, everything else faded away. The years of separation, the pain, the fear, all of it melted as Zara embraced her daughter. Lyra stood frozen for a moment, then slowly wrapped her arms around her mother. It felt real, like the warmth she had longed for all her life. "I never gave up on you," Zara whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I never stopped looking for you." Lyra didn't know what to say. She had so many questions, so many things she wanted to say, but all she could do was hold her mother tightly. It was as if the world had come back into focus. For the first time in years, she felt like she was truly home. Jack stood back, giving them the space they needed, but he couldn't help the smile that spread across his face. This was why he had fought so hard, why he had risked everything to bring Lyra back. It wasn't just about completing a mission. It was about healing, about family, and about love. He had seen Zara's strength and wisdom over the years, and now he saw the power of a mother's love. It was a force that could not be broken, not even by time or distance. Zara finally pulled away from Lyra, wiping her tears. She looked at her daughter with a mixture of pride and relief. "You've grown so much," she said softly. Lyra nodded, though she didn't know what to say. She still felt like the scared girl who had been taken all those years ago, but being in her mother's arms made her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Jack stepped forward, offering a respectful nod. "Zara, Lyra, I'm glad I could bring you together." Zara turned to Jack, her gaze full of gratitude. "You've done more than that, Jack. You've given us both a second chance. I will never forget what you've done for us." Lyra looked at Jack, her eyes full of thanks. "You saved me." Jack smiled, but he didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The reunion between mother and daughter was all that mattered now. The bond they shared was unbreakable, and he had been lucky enough to witness it. As they stood there together, the future seemed brighter. The galaxy still held many challenges, but for the first time in years, Zara and Lyra were not alone. They had each other, and that was all. The reunion had been everything they had hoped for, and more. Lyra and Zara were finally together after so many years apart. The bond between mother and daughter was undeniable. The joy in the air was so thick that even Jack couldn't help it feel a deep sense of satisfaction. They had done it. They had brought Lyra home. But the calm didn't last long. The ship's AI, which had been quiet during the emotional reunion, suddenly pinged with a warning. Jack's heart skipped a beat as he glanced at the display. "Incoming ships," the AI said, its voice calm but urgent. Several unknown vessels. Approaching fast. Zara's eyes sharpened, and she immediately stood tall, her regal presence returning. "They found us," she said, her voice full of quiet determination. "We must prepare." Lyra's face went pale. "Who are they?" "Enemies," Zara replied. "The same faction that took you from me. They will never stop hunting us. Not until they get what they want." Jack clenched his fists. He had known the mission wouldn't end peacefully. But this was a whole new level. He turned to Zara, knowing she was a warrior, but this wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. It was about family. It was about protecting the ones they loved. Jack quickly ran to the ship's controls. He could feel the tension in the air, but there was no time for fear. They had to move. They had to escape. Zara was right. The enemy wouldn't stop until they were taken down. "Lyra, stay low," Jack instructed, his voice firm as he worked. "Stay in the back. We're about to get a little rough." Lyra nodded, her hands trembling. She had been through so much already, but now she was facing the enemy again. The enemy that had caused her so much pain and suffering. This time, she wasn't alone. She had Jack. She had her mother. Jack punched in the coordinates to evade the incoming fleet, his mind working fast. The ship's engines roared as it took off, pushing them forward. Zara joined him at the controls, her calm presence a reminder of how much she had endured and survived. "Do you think we can outrun them?" Zara asked, her eyes scanning the data. "We'll try," Jack said, eyes locked on the screen. "I've got one trick up my sleeve." As the ship rocketed forward, Jack engaged the ship's cloaking system. The sudden silence that followed was strange, but he knew it was their best chance. The cloaking system would make them invisible to the enemy's sensors, but it wouldn't last long. They were too close to the enemy fleet for it to be a permanent solution. "I don't like this," Jack muttered, watching as the enemy fleet closed in on their position. "We can't stay cloaked for long. We need to get to the planet's atmosphere. If we can hide in the clouds, we might have a shot." Zara nodded. "Make it happen, Jack. I'll be ready." Minutes felt like hours as Jack maneuvered the ship through the void. His hands were steady on the controls, but his mind raced. He had fought battles before, but this was personal. He wasn't just fighting for survival now. He was fighting for Zara's daughter. He was fighting for Zara. He would not let them fall into the enemy's hands again, Jack. Lyra's voice came through from the back. "What happens if we can't outrun them? What if they catch us?" Jack's heart tightened at her words. He glanced back at her for a moment, seeing the fear in her eyes. It was clear she was still processing everything that had happened to her. But there was something in her eyes now, a strength that had been missing before. She was ready to fight. "We won't let them catch us, Lyra," Jack said, his voice full of conviction. "We're going to make it. Together." Suddenly, the ship shuddered as enemy fire struck the shields. Jack gritted his teeth. They had found them. The cloaking system was no longer working. The enemy had locked onto their position. "We've been spotted," Jack shouted, his voice sharp. "Brace yourselves." The ship rocked again, and Jack knew they didn't have much time. He punched the throttle, pushing the ship harder as it hurtled toward the planet's atmosphere. The ship's engines screamed as they tried to break through the gravitational pull. But the enemy wasn't far behind. "Get ready for evasive maneuvers," Jack ordered. "They'll be on our tail until we're in the clouds." Zara quickly moved to the weapons console. "I'll take care of the turrets," she said, her voice steady. "You focus on getting us out of here." Jack nodded. "Do whatever it takes. Can't let them catch us." The ship jolted again as another round of enemy fire hit. The shields were holding for now, but Jack knew they wouldn't last much longer. His hands were shaking slightly as he pulled the ship into a steep dive toward the planet below. The ground was getting closer and closer, but the ship's sensors were still trying to guide him through the storm of fire from the enemy fleet. "We're almost there," muttered under his breath. His knuckles were white from gripping the controls, but his focus was unbreakable. Suddenly, there was a loud explosion, and the ship lurched to one side. The lights flickered, and alarms blared in the cockpit. "We're hit," Jack shouted. "Stay with me, everyone. I need you." focused. Lyra's eyes widened in panic, but Jack could see she was trying to stay calm.
Aras.
Hands were steady as she fired back at the enemy ships. She was a true warrior, and Jack couldn't help but respect her even more in that moment. He was fighting not just to protect herself, but to protect her daughter, to protect their future. The ship tore through the atmosphere, its engines burning bright as they sped toward the clouds below. Jack could hear the enemy ships following close behind, but they were almost in the cover of the clouds. The turbulence grew, but Jack didn't slow down. This was their last chance. As they entered the dense cloud cover, Jack breathed a small sigh of relief. The enemy would have a much harder time tracking them now, but he knew they weren't safe yet. Not by a long shot. "Stay sharp," Jack said, his voice low but firm. "We're not out of this yet." The ship raced through the clouds, and as the enemy fleet continued to follow, Jack prepared for whatever came next. He couldn't stop. Fighting not when they were so close to safety, not when he had come so far to protect Lyra, to bring her. The storm of fire from the enemy fleet continued to chase them through the thick clouds, but Jack's mind was focused. His hands gripped the controls, steering the ship through the turbulent skies. Zara sat beside him, working the ship's weapons. System, firing back at their pursuers with skill and precision. The air was tense, each moment feeling like it could be their last. "We're losing altitude," Jack muttered, his voice tight with concentration. "We need to get out of this. Cloud cover and find somewhere safe." Zara didn't look at him. She was too focused on the enemy ships still on their tail. "We're not going to outrun them by running. We need to turn the tables." Jack glanced over at her, her face set in determination. He knew she was right. They couldn't keep running forever. They had to fight. His hands tightened on the controls as he made a sharp turn, changing course. "Hold on," he said, as the ship jolted and descended into a lower altitude. Lyra, who had been sitting quietly in the back of the ship, stood up now, her voice filled with a newfound strength. "What can I do?" Jack looked back at her, seeing the fire in her eyes. "Stay close, Lyra. This isn't over yet." The ship shook violently as another blast hit the side, sending the hull shuddering. Jack's heart raced. The damage was starting to take its toll. The enemy was relentless. It felt like every moment they spent in the air brought them closer to danger. The cloud cover ahead thinned, and Jack could see the vast landscape of Zara's homeworld below them. The sprawling forests and mountains stretched for miles, but the enemy ships were still behind them, gaining ground. "We're almost there," Jack said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. "I'll get us to the surface." Zara turned, her eyes meeting his. "If we land, we're trapped. They'll follow us." "We have one chance," Jack replied. "Once we hit the ground, we're fighting our way through." The ship tore through the clouds, and Jack's eyes scanned the horizon. Ahead, he saw a large clearing, an area surrounded by thick trees. It's a perfect place to land and make a stand. "I'm going to land," Jack said, his voice calm. "Get ready." Aye. The ship descended quickly, and the ground came closer. Hands flew over the controls, preparing for a quick exit. Lyra sat up straight, ready for whatever came next. The enemy fleet was closing in fast, but Jack wasn't going to let them catch up. "Now," Jack shouted. Just as the ship's landing gear hit the ground with a heavy thud, the ship skidded to a stop, its engines roaring as the brakes activated. The moment they were down, Jack threw open the cockpit door, grabbing his weapon. "Move, move. We don't have much time." Zara and Lyra followed him, both armed and ready. As they stepped outside, the sounds of the enemy ships grew louder. The wind howled through the trees, but Jack knew they had to make this stand. There was no turning back. The clearing was wide, surrounded by towering trees and rugged terrain. It was a beautiful place, but it was about to become the battlefield. Jack felt his pulse quicken as he surveyed the area, his eyes scanning the skies for the first sign of the enemy's ships. "They're almost here," Zara said, her voice low, but full of confidence. "Let's make sure they don't get the chance to land."
Jack nodded.
He wasn't a soldier who backed down, and neither was Zara. Together they had faced impossible odds. This would be no different. He knew they could do it. The first enemy, Ship broke through the trees, its dark silhouette cutting through the sky. Jack raised his weapon, aiming at the ship as it hovered above them. His finger tightened on the trigger. The blast hit, sending a shockwave through the air as the enemy ship exploded, debris falling like rain. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. That was just the beginning. More ships followed, each one flying low, trying to get a clear shot at them. Zara and Lyra fought side by side with Jack, their combined firepower relentless. The alien queen was a master of combat, and her movements were graceful yet deadly. Lyra, despite her past, was no stranger to battle. She fought with a fierce energy, her instincts sharp from years of surviving on her own. The enemy ships circled above them, trying to find an opening, but they didn't expect this level of resistance. Jack led the charge, weaving through the trees, staying low to avoid enemy fire. The forest became a maze of obstacles, but Jack used the terrain to his advantage. He ducked behind trees and rocks, returning fire with deadly accuracy. Zara was right by his side, her aim true as she took down another enemy ship. Lyra wasn't far behind, her blaster firing rapidly at the ships in the air. The battle was intense, the air filled with the sound of explosions and gunfire. For every enemy ship they took down, 2 more seemed to take its place. The odds were against them, but Jack wasn't giving up. He couldn't, not now, not when they were so close to victory. "I need cover," Jack shouted as an enemy ship fired directly at him. He dove to the ground, narrowly avoiding the blast. The heat from the explosion singed his jacket, but he was unharmed. Zara was already moving, taking out another ship before it could fire again. Her focus never wavered, her movements precise. She was in her element, and Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of awe at how effortlessly she fought. But the fight was far from over. More ships appeared, filling the sky. It was like they were everywhere, surrounding them from all sides. Jack's mind raced as he tried to think of a way out. But there was no easy escape. "We need to take them down now," Jack said, his voice grim. "We can't keep running. We have to finish this." Zara nodded, her eyes fierce. "Then let's end this." Together, they launched into one final assault, pushing forward with everything they had. The enemy fleet was relentless, but so were they. Jack fought with everything in him, knowing that this was the final push. He couldn't fail them now. The sounds of battle echoed through the clearing, and Jack's heart raced as he saw the last of the enemy ships fall from the sky. Silence fell over the battlefield, broken only by the crackling of fires and the heavy breaths of the soldiers who had fought side by side. They had won. This is part 5 of your story. Let me know if you'd like to continue with the next part or need any. The battlefield was quiet now, but the air still felt thick with the tension of the fight. The last of the enemy ships had fallen from the sky, their smoking wrecks scattered across the clearing. Jack stood at the edge of the chaos, panting from the battle, his eyes scanning the area. The fight had been hard, but they had done it. They had defeated the enemy, and they were still standing. Lyra and Zara stood beside him, both breathing heavily but unharmed. Zara's gaze was sharp, her body tense, but there was a visible relief in her eyes. She had led them through the battle with the calm of a seasoned warrior, and Jack couldn't help but admire her strength. Lyra, who had fought with everything she had, wiped the sweat from her forehead and looked around the clearing. Her face was dirty, her clothes torn, but there was a smile on her lips. The fear and uncertainty that had clouded her eyes for so long had been replaced with something else: hope. She had fought for her freedom and her mother, and now they were free. "We did it," Lyra said, her voice shaking with the after effects of the adrenaline. "We actually did it." Jack turned to look at her, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah, we did. We made it." The sound of approaching footsteps pulled his attention back to Zara. She was moving toward him, her expression softening as she looked at him and Lyra. She had witnessed the battle, but now that it was over, her focus returned to what truly mattered. "Her daughter," Zara said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "You're safe." Lyra's eyes welled with tears as she stepped toward her mother, her arms outstretched. "I thought I would never see you again," she whispered. Zara embraced her tightly, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and relief. I never gave up, she murmured, her hand resting on Lyra's back. And I never will. You're my daughter. I'll always protect you. Jack stood quietly, watching the reunion. He felt a deep sense of pride. He had played his part in bringing them back together, but this moment, this beautiful reunion, was theirs to share. He had helped heal the broken pieces of their family, and in doing so, had given them both something they thought they had lost forever. I'm proud of you, Lyra, Jack said, his voice steady. You're stronger than you think. Lyra pulled away from her mother and looked at Jack, a soft smile forming on her lips. I didn't do this alone. I couldn't have done it without you. Zara placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder, her eyes locking with Jack's. We owe you everything, Jack. You've given us more than we could ever ask for. Jack shook his head. No, I didn't do this alone either. You two have been through so much, and you're the ones who kept fighting. I just helped when I could. Zara nodded, her eyes filled with gratitude. And that's more than enough. For a moment, there was a quiet stillness between them. The chaos of battle was behind them, and now they had time to breathe. The enemy had been defeated, but there was still much to rebuild. The future wasn't clear, but it felt brighter. Jack had always known that, even in the darkest of times, hope could find a way. And now, standing here with Lyra and Zara, he felt like they had all earned that hope together. We can finally move forward, Zara said, her voice calm but full of conviction. The past has shaped us, but it doesn't define us. Together, we can rebuild. Lyra nodded, her face lighting up with a sense of purpose. I'm ready. I don't know what the future holds, but I know we can face it together. Jack smiled, looking out at the horizon. The future was uncertain, but he was confident that they would face whatever came next with strength and unity. They had all been through so much, and they had come out the other side stronger than ever. As they stood together in the clearing, the sun began to set, casting a warm golden glow across the land. The world around them was quiet, peaceful once more. The trees stood tall, their leaves rustling gently in the breeze. It was as if the earth itself had welcomed them back, offering them a fresh start. Jack turned to Zara and Lyra, feeling a sense of calm wash over him. He had done what he had set out to do. He had brought them back together, given them a chance to heal and rebuild. It was a victory not just for them, but for him as well. He had become part of their story, and their story was just beginning. We'll start fresh, Jack said, his voice firm with conviction. This is a new chapter for all of us. Zara nodded, a smile finally reaching her lips. A new beginning. Lyra stepped forward, looking out at the vast landscape before them. We're not alone anymore. That's all I've ever wanted. Jack felt a warmth in his chest as he watched them. They had fought for each other, and now they had won, had their family back, and with it, a future that was filled with endless possibilities. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew. One thing for sure, they would face it together.